Imagine a moment when the weight of your mistakes feels like it's crushing you, when guilt screams you're beyond saving, and then a voice, soft but unshakable, whispers, "There's still mercy." That voice belongs to Zadkiel, the Archangel of God's compassion, the one who stands between judgment's sword and the heart of forgiveness. In the heavens, where justice and mercy collide, Zadkiel holds back the storm of wrath, reminding us that God's deepest desire isn't to punish but to restore. His story isn't just ancient lore, it is a lifeline for every soul longing for a second chance. Stay with me, because once you hear how Zadkiel changed history and still fights for you today, you'll never see God's love the same way again. In the vastness of heaven, where angels of fire and light stand before God's throne, one figure shines with a unique purpose. His name is Zadkiel, a name rooted in the Hebrew word meaning righteousness of God. At first, that sounds heavy, like a call to judgment, a demand for perfection. But Zadkiel is different. He's not the angel of punishment or wrath. He's the angel of mercy, the one who carries God's heart for forgiveness. Picture this: a being who has stood in the presence of the Almighty since before the stars were born, reflecting not God's anger, but His compassion. Have you ever felt like you didn't deserve forgiveness? That's where Zadkiel steps in, whispering that God's love is bigger than your failures. Zadkiel's role is no small thing. Ancient traditions place him among the 7 archangels, those closest to God's throne, each embodying a piece of His divine nature. Michael wields the sword of power, Gabriel carries the voice of prophecy, Raphael brings healing, but Zadkiel, he holds the strength of mercy. Mercy isn't weakness, it's the courage to forgive when justice demands punishment, the power to lift up a broken soul when condemnation feels easier. Zadkiel stands as proof that God's heart leans toward compassion even when the world cries for justice. Can you feel the hope in that? Every time you've thought you're too far gone, Zadkiel's presence says, God hasn't given up on you. One of the most gripping moments in Zadkiel's story comes from Genesis 22, a scene so raw it echoes through time. The binding of Isaac. Abraham, a man of faith, stood on Mount Moriah, his heart breaking as he raised a knife over his son, Isaac, the child of promise, the miracle he'd waited decades for. God had commanded this sacrifice, a test so unimaginable it defies comprehension. Isaac, carrying the wood, asked innocently, "Father, where's the lamb?" Abraham's response, "God will provide," was a whisper of faith against a storm of fear. The altar was built, Isaac was bound, and Abraham's hand trembled as the knife gleamed in the sunlight. Heaven held its breath. Then at the very edge of despair, a voice shattered the silence. "Abraham, Abraham, do not harm the boy." Some traditions say this was Zadkiel, the angel of mercy, stepping in to stop the blade. Can you imagine the relief, the flood of hope? In that moment, Zadkiel wasn't just saving Isaac, he was revealing God's heart. Right there, caught in a thicket, was a ram, God's provision. Isaac lived and the sacrifice was made, but not at the cost of a son. Zadkiel's voice didn't just stop a knife, it showed the world that God delights in mercy over sacrifice. Mount Moriah became more than a place of testing, it became a symbol of hope, later the site of Jerusalem's temple, where forgiveness was sought through sacrifices, pointing to the ultimate sacrifice of Christ. Zadkiel's moment on that mountain wasn't just for Abraham, it was a promise for you, for me, for every soul who's ever faced a moment when all seemed lost. Have you ever stood at your own Mount Moriah, where hope felt gone, only to find mercy breaking through? But Zadkiel's story doesn't end with Abraham. His role stretches across the heavens, woven into the very order of God's throne. Ancient Jewish and Christian traditions speak of 7 archangels, each with a purpose that reflects God's nature. Michael fights the battles, Gabriel delivers the messages, Raphael heals the broken, but Zadkiel balances the scales of justice with mercy. In mystical writings, he's linked to the 4th heaven, a realm of compassion and forgiveness where prayers of repentance rise to God's throne. Some texts even describe him working alongside angels like Samael, the accuser, who demands justice. Where Samael calls for punishment, Zadkiel pleads for grace, creating a divine tension that reveals God's heart. Justice must be served, but mercy triumphs. Can you see yourself in that balance? Your mistakes demand accountability, but your heart cries for grace. And Zadkiel is the reminder that God hears both. Mercy isn't just a concept, it's a force stronger than any sword. It's the power to break cycles of hate, to heal wounds that words can't touch, to offer a second chance when none seems possible. Zadkiel embodies this. He's not a passive figure, softly pleading for leniency. He's a warrior of compassion, standing firm in heaven's courts, ensuring that forgiveness isn't an afterthought but a cornerstone of God's plan. Think about it. Every time you felt unworthy, every time shame told you you're finished, Zadkiel's mission says otherwise. His very existence is a declaration that God's love doesn't give up, even when you've given up on yourself. Have you ever carried a burden you thought you'd never escape? Zadkiel's story is for you, a reminder that mercy is always within reach. The Bible is filled with moments where mercy shines like a beacon, when Nineveh repented, and God spared the city from destruction. When the prodigal son returned, welcomed not with judgment, but with open arms. When Jesus looked at the woman caught in adultery and said, "Neither do I condemn you, go and sin no more." And most powerfully, when Jesus hung on the cross whispering, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Each of these moments carries Zadkiel's heartbeat, the pulse of mercy that refuses to let judgment have the final word. This is why Zadkiel matters. He's not just an angel in ancient stories. He's a symbol of the God who sees your worst moments and still chooses to love you. Can you feel the weight of that truth? It's not just history, it's your story right now. Zadkiel's name appears in traditions beyond the Bible, in Jewish and Christian mystical writings, where he's often listed among the 7 archangels who stand before God. In these texts, he's tied to the Sephirah of Chesed, kindness, love, and mercy, on the Kabbalistic tree of life. This is a poetic way of saying Zadkiel channels God's compassion into the world, carrying the prayers of the broken to the throne, ensuring they're heard. In some stories, he's the intercessor, pleading for forgiveness when judgment looms. In others, he's the one who helps souls release anger and embrace healing. Across centuries, one truth about Zadkiel remains. He's the angel who reminds us that God's mercy is stronger than his wrath. Have you ever prayed for forgiveness, unsure if it would come? Zadkiel's presence says, "Your prayers are not lost. They recarried to the heart of God." This balance of justice and mercy isn't just a heavenly concept, it's deeply human. We all wrestle with it. On one side, our failures demand a price. On the other, our hearts beg for grace. Zadkiel stands at that crossroads, showing us that God's righteousness isn't about destruction, it's about restoration. His name, Righteousness of God, doesn't mean harsh judgment. It means setting things right through love. Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's the strength to absorb pain, to let go of the right to punish, to choose compassion over revenge. Zadkiel's mission challenges us to live this way too. Who in your life needs your mercy? What grudge is weighing you down? If Zadkiel were beside you, he'd whisper that forgiveness is your greatest strength, a reflection of God's own heart. Can you imagine the freedom of letting go? Mercy is costly. It demands that someone bear the pain of the offense, that someone choose not to strike back. That's what makes it so powerful. When God forgives, he doesn't ignore sin, he absorbs its cost. When Jesus died, he became the ultimate ram in the thicket, the sacrifice that spared us all. Zadkiel's moment on Mount Moriah pointed to this truth, a shadow of the cross where mercy triumphed forever. Every time you choose forgiveness, you're stepping into that same divine pattern, breaking the chains of bitterness with the strength of God's love. Zadkiel's story isn't just about an angel. It's about you, about the mercy you've received, and the mercy you're called to give. Have you ever felt the power of forgiving someone who hurt you? That's Zadkiel's mission, alive in your heart. The story of Zadkiel is a call to see God's heart clearly. Psalm 145:8 declares, "The Lord is gracious and full of compassion, slow to anger and great in mercy." This isn't an exception to God's nature. It's who he is. Zadkiel reflects that truth, standing as a heavenly signpost that God delights in forgiveness more than punishment. He's the angel who reminds us that no mistake is too big, no shame too heavy for God's mercy to overcome. When you feel unworthy, When guilt whispers that you're finished, Zadkiel's presence says, God's love is bigger. His story stretches from Mount Moriah to your life today, a reminder that mercy is woven into God's plan for you. Can you hear his voice in your struggles, calling you to trust in God's compassion? This isn't just a tale of an ancient angel, it's a mirror for your soul. What's your Mount Moriah? Where in your life have you faced a moment when all seemed lost, only to find mercy breaking through? Maybe it's a mistake you can't undo, a wound you can't heal, or a grudge you can't release. Zadkiel's mission is to remind you that God's mercy is stronger than your failures, deeper than your pain. He stands in heaven's courts, pleading for grace, ensuring that forgiveness is never out of reach. But his story also challenges you to live mercy, to forgive as you've been forgiven, to reflect the heart of a God who never gives up. Have you ever felt the relief of a second chance? That's Zadkiel's legacy, alive in you. The mystery of Zadkiel isn't just about an angel, his name or role. It is about the God he serves, a God who sees your brokenness and chooses love, a God who offers mercy when judgment is deserved, a God who sent his Son to be the ultimate sacrifice so you could live. Zadkiel's story calls you to trust that mercy, to embrace it, to share it. The next time you feel the weight of guilt or the sting of someone else's wrong, remember Zadkiel, the angel who stands for forgiveness, who holds back the sword, who whispers, "There's still hope." Will you listen? Will you choose mercy for yourself and for others? The story of Zadkiel isn't over. It's alive in every moment you choose grace over judgment, love over hate, forgiveness over revenge. God's mercy is calling. Will you answer?